Welcome to the Influencer's Journey. This is where we explore the transformative power of mindset and the stories behind leaders who have shaped their own path to remarkable success. Each week, we embark on a journey to uncover the beliefs, habits, and inner strength required to not just be seen, but felt as a true person of influence.
Have you been standing in the same place doing the same thing far too long? Do you know you're capable of more, but you just don't know where to start? Our topic today, dissatisfaction with status quo. I am your host, Suzan Hart, and I am thrilled to have you here with us today. Today, we're going to explore what you do when you feel stuck, frustrated, unfulfilled, having unfulfilled potential, and trapped in the cycle of mediocrity. I am thrilled to have an opportunity to sit down with our guest today. I have watched this beautiful woman go on just an inspiring journey. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So without further ado, the leader, and I definitely say leader, I have the privilege to introduce, has spent the last 29 years working and teaching in the Canadian post-secondary environment. She's also a serial entrepreneur, having had several businesses ranging from professional organizer, that I can attest to, for small businesses to being a student success coach. Now, that is a really neat thing, a student success coach. She has used her business background and in strategy, human resources, and training to develop and create her signature program, The Blueprint for Success in Life. This speaker's work is influenced by her deep belief that each and every one of us has a unique and authentic role to play in the world. But what I like most about this individual is her desire to serve, her desire to contribute, and her desire to make each and us just reach our best, our potential. Please help me welcome the creator of Country Jewels Retreats and Conferences, the lifestyle strategist and success coach, Julie Caldwell.
Hi, Suzanne. So excited to join you today.
Oh my gosh, I am super excited to sit down with you. And when I say that, it's because I have had the privilege of watching part of this journey. And it has been a pretty extraordinary journey.
It has indeed.
Yes. So if you're joining us, we're going to take you on a journey. You're going to learn a little bit about what happens when you feel stuck and you've been standing in the same place, and what it takes to inspire yourself to take action, the courage it takes, the commitment it takes. And we're going to definitely have that conversation. So before we jump into my questions, what I'd love to hear, your event that you do is called the Ignite Conference. And I know it was born out of a time in your life that inspired you to do something special for women. So share a little bit about how the Ignite Conference came to be.
Yeah, I love that you asked that question. And it really is my passion project, if I could put it that way. The Ignite Women's Conference came out of a place where I was personally in a position of dissatisfaction with status quo. I was not happy with my life and where it was. I'd just come out of an almost 20-year marriage, and I was questioning who I was and what I wanted and where I wanted to go. And as I was exploring what my options were and what the answers to those questions were, I was also teaching a course to some students around how to use tools and strategies in business to make informed business decisions. And as I was prepping for my course one day, I thought, I wonder if I could apply some of these concepts to my own life. And I started doing that and I was like, oh my goodness, these work. And I thought, what if I could teach other women to use these tools so that if they're standing at a crossroad in their life, in a place of dissatisfaction, they could use them to make informed decisions, to put together a plan of action for how to get to where they're at. So the Ignite Women's Conference really came from my own personal journey of not knowing where to go and what to do, and wanting to create a space for other women to truly come into their own and to live their life with meaning and purpose.
You know, that is so special. And they say that oftentimes through our pain is born some of our most powerful moments
Yep.
and some of our most powerful gifts. And I think that is really true in terms of what I see for you. And I think the beautiful thing about what happens at the Ignite conference is, of course, you open and you share your journey, the depth of your story. So if you want to hear the deep story, you got to go to the Ignite conference.
Definitely.
So you share the depth of that story. And what happens in the room through your sharing is that I believe other women feel safe to explore and share what's going on for them.
Yeah, yeah. It was really important to me that it wasn't just a kind of a rah day where we bring together people, women, and that you walk away and you go, oh, that's great. But then, a couple of days later, you forget about what you were doing. I really wanted to create a space where women felt safe to come together. And I think often as women, we carry roles, titles, responsibilities. And every time we accept one or more of those things, we push further down our hopes and our dreams for what we want to do. And so I really wanted to create a safe space in a day where women could come together with other women who were like-minded, in a similar place, standing at a crossroad, ready to make a change in their life. And in some cases, the women who come to Ignite know what they want to do, but don't know how to do it, or don't know what they want to do and just need a little bit of prodding. And again, a reminder of, you can be and do all you want to do. You just have to acknowledge it, bring it out, and then say yes to what comes from that journey of going forward with it.
And it's so often that we need someone to hold up the mirror and remind us of not only who we are, but
Yeah.
what we are capable of. I want to talk a little bit about the tools, and you're taking actual business tools
Mhm.
and using them in this very unique way. Speak a little bit more about what becomes available as you have almost pointed these tools in a new direction and
Yeah.
made them accessible for women who are at that crossroad.
Yeah, for sure. So the first part of the journey when I work with women really is about digging into some of the values and beliefs. So I do a little bit more of that holistic side because I think it's important to get anchored in who we are and what we actually believe. And I think we carry sometimes beliefs and values that are not our own. So it's
Yeah.
important to unpack and let go of those, or decide that, yes, they are my own. But then from there, usually it means if you're standing at a crossroad, a decision needs to be made. And I don't know about you, Suzanne, but anytime I used to make decisions, and sometimes even now, I will stand there and I'll be like, do I? Don't I? I don't know. And so what I do is I teach women how to use what in business is a decision matrix, but how to identify these criteria, these metrics, I like to call them, that can help them make decisions that are right for who they are and where they're at this point in their life. And it's such a powerful exercise because often we're weighing, do I, don't I, should I do this, or this? And when we're clear on what our values are, what our beliefs are, what our financial needs are, what the impact on our life is going to be in terms of time or financial freedom or other criteria, then the decision actually becomes really easy about what we need to do. And it takes away the burden that a lot of women feel when it comes to making a decision. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, what are the resources you need? Who are the stakeholders in your life? The people that are in your circle of influence? And how can you prepare the people in your life for the journey that you're going on? Because sometimes, and I found this in my own journey, people are open to and supportive of the change that we bring in our life, and other people themselves
That's
get
fine.
scared. Yeah, they're
That's
like,
so
what?
fine.
you're changing. How can that be? And they're not supportive necessarily, or they're afraid you're going to become somebody that they no longer know or can relate to. And so we have conversations about how do you prepare your stakeholders, the circle of influence and the people in your life, for the journey you're on so that you can move ahead in a way that's meaningful and impactful.
The other part that's really neat about this is there are also those of us who make quick decisions,
Snap decisions. Yep.
snap decisions, right? And even for those individuals, it's great to have a tool that you can check your decision against.
Yes.
And to have a backdrop where you can have some key questions, some key areas to look to actually see, yeah, I made this decision quickly and it may feel good in the moment, but let me check and see if it's sound.
Yes.
Let me check and see what are the things I haven't thought of. And also, if it's just my enthusiasm
Yeah.
in the
You know,
moment.
one of the biggest things I find when I'm working with women is that an opportunity will present itself, and there's no shortage of opportunities in this world. I'm a big fan of you say yes, you learn, you grow, you change. But if you have a vision and a plan that you're working towards for what you want to achieve, when something comes along that looks good or sometimes too good to be true, having a tool to be able to help you make an informed decision can be very powerful. And it may be a thank you, but not right now answer that you need to give because in where you're at in your life, it's just not the right time financially, or you don't have the right education or whatever that might be.
Or
And so
squirrel.
yeah, squirrel, exactly, exactly. And so having just this mechanism, it can be so powerful to just like you say, make a check. Am I in the right place? Is this in alignment with who I am, how I want to live my life? And often I'll speak for myself, the dissatisfaction with status quo have had at different points in my life. If I speak professionally, I was once in a job that was a great job. It was a terrific opportunity, but I started to feel really disconnected and not happy in it. And I stopped and I went, what is going on with this picture? Because I love the overall environment and the idea of what I'm doing. But I realized it wasn't in alignment with who I was and how I live my life. And so my decision then was, do I choose to stay in spite of, or do I choose to go and find something that feeds my soul? So it was a great moment to pause, reflect, and make an informed decision about what's next for me.
Such a great tool and such a great concept for business. And I remember when we were talking it through as you came in to, I would say my office, my Zoom
Yeah,
office at
the
that time,
virtual world. Yeah.
and you were like, oh my gosh, I got I
Yeah.
think it was God spoke to me and said,
Yep.
I
Yep.
need to do a conference. And I was,
Yes.
oh, okay. And as it unfolded, it was just so exciting and just so, oh yeah, you're right on point. And it was such a gift to watch you have, first of all, download an idea,
Mm,
and two, have it take shape, and
mhm.
then have the courage to breathe life into it. Because
Yes.
I know there's those of you listen who have an idea and it's still on the shelf, or it's knocking about
Yeah.
because you're got to get it perfect before you launch it.
Yes.
Uh, Jules is here to tell you it's not going to be perfect.
No.
Don't knock it about.
No.
The courage to just get into action.
Yeah, well, as you know, Suzanne, I'm a self-professed recovering performance-oriented, people-pleasing perfectionist. And so, I was my own worst enemy in a lot of my journey. And some days I still am. It's something I still struggle with. But you've helped me sort of shift how I look at and think and respond to the stories I tell myself. And so I've come a long way in that journey. But Ignite wouldn't be where it's at. We're celebrating our fifth conference, this fall. We have two a year here in Ottawa. The vision is to take it across Canada. That wasn't there 5 conferences ago, but now I'm like, oh, what if we could ignite all of Canada and the world? Can you imagine a world of women and individuals who are living the life that they desire and are excited and passionate? That's
Mhm.
amazing. But it starts with a yes. I'm
Yeah.
going to take one step. And there are some days, and you can attest to this, where I was like, nope, 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 not doing it. I can't do it. I've shut myself down, and it was like, no, just take one action. What's one thing I can do today to move forward with intention and purpose? And then everything else just comes from there. And
Yeah.
asking for help.
Yes. And I was blessed to be one of the mentors on Jules' journey that she asked for help. So when I say I got to follow the journey, I got to follow a leg in the journey, let's say.
Yeah.
All right. So are you guys ready? Was that like a nice warm up? Little backdrop of the Ignite conference and a small summary of Jules' journey. So if you're just joining us, please let us know who you are, where on the planet you're joining us from, because we know people come from all over. Let us know what you do for a living and who you think you're called to bless. Who are your people? As you jump on, put your name in the comment section and light up the comment section. Ask questions, comment, share, and invite a friend. If you pulled up here today and you're like, "Ooh, this looks good," and you have a friend who you know needs this conversation, go inbox them, text them, and say, "Hey, I'm listening to the Influencers Journey show. They have this beautiful woman on, and she's going to drop some knowledge. So you got to come join." If you are listening to the replay, definitely hashtag replay and act like you're listening to it live. Comment, let us know who you are, where you're joining us from. Light up the comment section because we will definitely go back and look at the comments and add to it. If you're listening on YouTube, please do subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, also subscribe. We want to be able to come into your inbox and let you know a new show is about to happen. So you guys ready to get this party started? Jules, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right. Well, I am super excited. So for those of you who are just joining us, welcome back to the Influencers Journey Show. Our topic today is dissatisfaction with status quo, when fear and uncertainty keeps you stuck. I'm going to pause there for a moment. So if this is you, this is your conversation. If you know you've been standing in a place too long, getting ready to get ready, but just can't move, and you know you're filled with brilliance, we're going to have a conversation for you today. So I think where I want to start, Jules, is one is to talk a little bit about this thing called dissatisfaction with status quo. Because I remember we dropped that in when we were mentoring, and I was like, "Oh, that's good. Write that down."
Yep.
Right? What was the defining moment when you realized that staying in your current situation was no longer an option and you were sitting in that dissatisfaction with status quo?
It's a great question. And as I mentioned earlier, I had come out of a 20-year marriage. And the defining moment for me, there was a day in particular where I received a call or a text actually from one of my kids to say, I think you should pick up the phone. The police are here and they're arresting, dad on the front lawn. And
Wow.
at that moment, I was just like, oh my goodness. And I knew on my drive home that to get home to be with my kids and to find out what was going on, the things that were rolling around in my head were enough is enough. Something has got to change. And I knew I was at a crossroad where I needed to make a decision to change my life. And a very short version of that backstory was I had a stirring, well, probably for several years prior to that, but I finally decided to acknowledge the stirring inside, that what I like to call the little still small voice that speaks to
Yeah.
us. And I know you know it, ladies, and those who are watching. There's that voice that speaks to us. And for me, I choose to believe it's God, but whatever it is for you, I heard this calling that was like, it's time for you to end your marriage. And I wasn't quite ready, but the first time I heard that voice, I finally took a leap and I said, I need to take a break. And what I did in that break was what was the defining moment for me. I actually went and I made a vision board because I had no longer, I had no idea who I was anymore.
Mhm.
What were my values? What were my beliefs? What did I want from my life? I'd spent 20 years with someone, building a life with them, and letting others, as a performance oriented, people pleasing perfectionist, tell me what I should do and how I should do it. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to take this leap and I'm going to end my marriage, which was not an easy decision to come to, I needed to understand who I was in order to be able to do that, to stand in my own and in my story. And so for me, that was, that was the start of the end. When I asked my husband for a break, I took the opportunity to explore these things. And then he did eventually come back home, but I knew deep down it was going to happen again. And so when it happened again, I pulled out my vision board, which became a bit of my metric, for, is what's happening right now in alignment with what I want in my life. And Suzanne, you and I talked about the decision matrix. That was it for me. This wasn't on alignment with who I wanted to be, wasn't in alignment with what I wanted for my kids or for my husband, even at that point in time. And so made the decision. I was like, done, enough is enough, and something has to change. And so I asked for a divorce. And that opened the door for all of us to be set free, and for me to really start looking at who I was and what I wanted, and to live the life that I knew was inside bursting.
Oh, you know, I believe that God whispers to us,
Mhm.
right? He whispers, and it's this gentle, quiet whisper, and it's your gut, in my opinion.
Yep.
And then he taps us on the shoulder,
Yep.
and we're like, "Oh yeah, okay." Ignore, ignore, and then we have our frying pan moment. That's what I call it.
Bam.
Bam! And
Yep.
you had your frying pan
I had a frying pan moment.
moment. And that frying pan moment at sometimes just feels like it levels you, right?
Yep. Yep.
It rocks your world and you're just like, what happened? And for me, I learned, when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the whisper. I remember the tap. I remember
Yep.
the gentle shake,
Yep.
the moment. And for me, that was kind of my marriage ending as well. There's something you said that I think is so key to highlight, because I don't want anyone to miss this gem.
Mm.
You said that it was the best decision for all of us.
Yeah.
And how often is it that we make a decision that's difficult, that we have been procrastinating on
Yep.
and avoiding, not actually paying attention to the gift that it's going to be to the other person.
Yeah.
And what I mean by the gift is, I know for myself, when I stayed, in many ways, I enabled,
Mhm.
I'm gonna say it,
Yep.
I enabled some not healthy behaviors.
Yep.
And it was when I removed myself from the situation, because I'm the problem solver, I'm the perfectionist, I'm the get it done now. I am going to be the bottom line, because we not going down on my watch. So I am going to fix this. That's Suzanne.
Yep.
And what I realized, that I was standing in the way of someone else's growth.
Mhm.
And by removing myself,
Yeah.
not only did I have to face me and grow,
Yeah.
but they would have to face themselves and choose to grow or not.
Yes.
However, I was creating the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. There came a moment where I had to make a decision, and I really didn't want to, but as clear as day, remembered, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I don't know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but I know I need to do it. And I'm going to work through whatever comes from it. And as we journeyed, it hurt. It was hard. It's not what any of us had wanted, but it set us all free. And it allowed us to, really come into our own. And I say us, being my two kids who are now grown adults and doing, their own thing. And, my husband is off doing his own thing. And, but it was better because we were all hurting ourselves by staying in this situation. And so I had to own the choice and the decision and the outcomes. And that was something that I had a really tough time with, when I worked with you, Suzanne. We had a continual battle. Well, you just sat there and humored me, and I battled with you, because I was like, well, I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. And that was probably one of my biggest realizations and learnings in this journey, was sometimes not making a decision is making a decision. And by my indecision, I kept the dissatisfaction with status quo, continually going in this repeated cycle, and we were all not happy. And so, it was tough to do, but it was one of the most freeing things that I could have done for all of us.
Oh, and Jules, I learned that when I was managing a women's shelter.
Hmm.
And we had women that would leave and come back and leave and would come back. And I remember listening to staff saying, "Oh, we totally understand. And we will be here to support you when you go." And I was like, there's something wrong about that conversation,
Yeah.
or not helpful. It's probably better language.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with my team and saying, when a woman leaves, we have to let her know that she's making a choice.
Hmm.
And she's not making a choice that's in the best interest of her family at this moment because
Yeah.
things have not changed.
Yeah.
And I remember them telling me, "Oh, that's so mean." And I said, "It's true though."
Yeah.
And what I remember saying to them is, until you know you have a choice,
Hmm.
you will never make a different choice.
Yeah.
And so we have to let them know they have a choice. And yes, we can affirm that the choice is difficult, as you know,
Hmm.
and it's painful and it's going to challenge and stretch you.
Yeah.
However, I think just acknowledging that you have a choice
Yes.
is such an empowering thing.
It is. And, what you just described for me, I talk about this a lot when I work with women and at the Ignite conference, but what you just described is what I was feeling was I had become comfortable in the uncomfortable, to the point that the uncomfortable was like the safe place for me to be.
Mhm.
And the idea of making a change and moving forward and maybe achieving a goal, or, going for a dream that I never thought I could have, was more terrifying than staying in the discomfort. But it wasn't until I was able to just say, you know what, I'm going to embrace this decision. I'm choosing to end the pain, the hurt, the discomfort for a new kind of uncomfortable, that I can become comfortable and feel safe in. And I get to define what that looks like. I don't let it happen to me. I get to be a part of the conversation. Where previously, I would argue, we're always a part of the conversation. We're always, making decisions. But I was not necessarily, again, as a people-pleasing, performance-oriented perfectionist, I was letting other people drive me. And so I very consciously was like, no, I'm going to own where I'm at in my life. It didn't happen overnight. You and I battled that regularly for almost a year. And I still have moments of struggle with that. But I think it's important there's almost not a day goes by that I don't stop and think, you're choosing to do this. You're choosing to not do this, or you're choosing to do this. And be aware that if you're choosing that, here's what the, consequences or the outcome of that is going to be. But it's an intentional conversation I have now with myself.
And such a powerful conversation. I mean, thank you for sharing that, because there's no bigger gift than choice.
Hmm.
We say that God gave us free will. Free will is choice.
Yep.
And oftentimes we minimize it, or we become helpless because we lose sight of our opportunity to choose. And yes, some choices are really difficult, but the gift of being able to choose is huge. You started to highlight this, but I want to dive into it a little bit
Sure.
deeper. How have your internal beliefs, or how had your internal beliefs and fears held you back from breaking free from status quo? So when you were in that place of dissatisfaction, what were the beliefs that kept you there?
Mm. Um, I believed that I couldn't do it by myself.
Oh,
Uh,
common one.
Yeah, right. And so, if I was going to end my marriage, I felt like I was going to be alone in the journey. And because I am this recovering people-pleasing, performance-oriented perfectionist, I wasn't going to ask for help for anybody. So I absolutely felt alone in the journey. So I was living in a lie. I was believing this lie, about where I was at. And that was probably one of the biggest things for me that kept me in the dissatisfaction for so long. And I think of other fears, the fear of failure. Nobody gets married to get divorced, right? I don't think we ever say, yeah, I want to get married because I want to get divorced one day. I believed it was, for the long haul. And so I was embarrassed and ashamed of the fact that this was the state that my life and my marriage was in.
Yeah.
And so, that takes a lot to get your head around sometimes, especially if you're too proud to ask for help and to tell people where you're at.
I could shake hands. I can
Yeah.
so shake hands.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about kind of how did the beliefs begin to unravel a little bit?
Unravel. That for me came day by day. I don't know about you, Suzanne, but I'm a big journaler.
Mhm.
And so in the midst of all of this, I probably have like 50 different journals. But I find it really important. And I actually encourage the ladies that I work with now. What happens when we're in the midst of that dissatisfaction, that feeling of overwhelm, that fear of what's happening, in here, everything is floating around and it weighs us down. And so, one of the mechanisms I've used throughout my life has been to journal and to get out everything that's floating around so that I can make space to think and to feel and to acknowledge what's happening. And I really did have to push myself to the point of I can't do this anymore, and I couldn't function. I was frozen where I was in my life. And
Mhm.
somebody asked me the most powerful question. And funny enough, I just today did a bit of an article on it. Somebody asked me a question, and it was the most life-changing question I've ever had asked of me. And they were like, what if a year from now, nothing has changed in your life?
Yeah.
And what if you were in the same relationship, the same job, the same, whatever, insert here. And when they asked me that question, ugh, I'm getting like shivers just talking about it. When they asked me that question, I was terrified. The thought of being in the same place yet another year from where I was the shake in the boots that I needed to start to look at what my options were and how to make decisions about what's next. And I
Mhm.
ask myself that question regularly when I become afraid of something I want to do. When I started growing Ignite, and I have this vision to take it across Canada and grow it. What if a year from now I'm in the same place and I'm not growing and I'm not learning and I'm not changing? That's enough to motivate a lot of people. And so I encourage, those who are listening, what if a year from now you're in the same place that you're in right now and you have not changed, you have not grown, you have not learned, and you're in the same place repeating the same patterns and cycles?
And they say that that's death, right?
Yep.
It's death and depression. And people are like, no, I'm just standing still. No, life is ticking forward and
Yep.
you're standing still. And if you're not growing, um, you're dying.
Yep.
And I know for myself, having gone through that similar experience. And interestingly, Jules, I was writing an article as well, and I think the number is about 70%
Yeah.
of leaders and people who don't make a decision in the moment
Yeah.
find themselves in the same place or worse
Yeah.
a year from then.
Isn't that scary?
That is scary.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm an avid goal setter. I'm a
Yep.
big journaler, and I think that's one of the things that drives me
Yeah.
is I just love to grow. I think the other thing about journaling, and maybe you can expand on this because you touched about, getting the clutter out of
Mhm.
your head and getting those thoughts out of your head and on paper. I know for myself, there's something about writing it down and
Mhm.
reading it
Yes.
that is like at times a slap in the face,
Mhm.
right? For me, my journaling is my conversation with God.
Yep.
It's a prayer, even
Yeah.
if it's just like, I gotta tell you this stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I look at what I tell him, it's like he answers me like, seriously, child? Take a look at what you just wrote. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
And so there's something very unique It's like talking to a friend and your friend tells you what you said, and you're just like, did I just say that?
Yes.
Like you hear it.
Yes.
And journaling is that private way of doing that.
Yeah. I think it's really powerful. I love what you just said, because I think it's a step that some people are not comfortable with. Journaling is one thing. And, yes, I have a plethora of journals that are around, and I pick them up every now and then, and I go back to remind myself of the journey I've been on.
Me too.
But I think sometimes people are afraid to go back and to look at, where they were, or to acknowledge what maybe they wrote or what they said. But I use it as a learning tool for myself, and a reminder of how far I've come, because sometimes when we're in the midst of the stickiness and
Yeah.
that dissatisfaction, we journal and, capture things every day, or sometimes we just leave gaps. I'll notice, if there's big gaps, oh, I didn't write for a couple of weeks. I must have been pretty down at that point in time. And yep, sure enough, that next page is like, okay, yep, I should have been here, blah, blah, blah. But it tells a story, and it helps me learn about who I am, and it helps me break the patterns and the cycles sometimes of what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling. But there's power in going back and reading it and reflecting and deciding what you want to do with what you're learning and hearing in that writing as well.
That's so true. And I want to highlight for everyone that the mind is makes things up.
Oh, yes.
And I know for
Expert
my
maker-upper.
right. And I know for myself, my journal is a very humbling thing because your journal does not lie.
No.
And so I know that there are periods of times in my life where I think I've done so much more.
Mm-hmm.
I've been up to such big things.
Yeah.
And then I go read my journal, and I'm like, oh, not so much.
Yeah.
And so it's a way that you can look at so many aspects of who you're being
Mm-hmm.
in a very private way, however, in a very honest way.
Yes. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
can't be honest with yourself, then who can you be honest with, right? And that's another challenge in and of itself. I do know people who have shared, that they write what they think they should write. And I'm like, oh no, write what you feel, what you're
Mhm.
experiencing, what you're going through. Take the stuff that's in here that's weighing you down, set yourself free from it and learn from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know for myself, even in my business, when I am struggling,
Mm-hmm.
I will write my struggle down
Yep.
and I'll start to doodle and brainstorm and whatever. And usually by the time I've gotten into it's
Yeah.
journaling, I like the answer begins to emerge or
Yep.
there's some clarity that comes.
Yeah.
And so there's so much value
Yeah.
in putting it down on paper. I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer that there's seeds of brilliance in all of us.
Yep.
We haven't birthed all those seeds. And I think journaling is a great way to ignite one of those seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And as you ask yourself great questions and you journal, you're going to find an answer. The mind's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Oh no, absolutely. I know you do this a lot as well, as Reed, professional development and personal growth. I'm all over that as well. And so I will journal and write some of the things that really stick out for me in some of the books that I'm reading, and the reflections. And, if you could see my computer screens in front of me right now, I've got like a gazillion stick-it notes with, but very powerful and intentional ones. There's not actually that many. There's like six with really strong messages for where I'm at right now that come out of some of those things. And sometimes the reflections are the things I'll dig deep into in my journaling, and I'll have an aha moment that comes
Yeah.
from that. And those are those listening to the still small voice, the gut, when you feel that something stirring. Those are powerful moments where when you allow yourself to be quiet, to be still, to capture the things that are floating around, that's when we really open ourselves up to what's next and where we can go.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
So as you go on this journey,
Hmm.
and so it's been years since you've been single,
Hmm.
years since you were alone.
Yeah.
You've got two children that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
Life feels upside down. What was the mindset shift that was necessary for you to begin to create real change in your life? And what did that process look like and feel like?
Mm. It's a great question. So I would have to say in the immediate of after having made the decision to end my marriage and, to move my kids and sell our home and all of that kind of stuff, I probably floated for a year or two. Honestly, we were in a home that I called our healing home. And it was because we left, our family home and we went to this new place. And I just allowed myself to, um, go through what I was going through. But it wasn't until I got to a place and honestly, quite frankly, started working with you because I knew there was more for me, Suzanne. I was just bursting inside for wanting to be more, to do more, to have more, to create change and create spaces for others to live the life they're meant to live. But it wasn't until I started doing work in my mindset, and sort of three things happened in there. One, I had to stop playing the victim, and that's something you and I talked a lot about. I was living in the victim mentality, like stuff had been done to me, and I wasn't in control of what was happening. And that was, as I talked about earlier, I had to come to a recognition of I had a choice to make, and sometimes not making the choice is the choice. And so that was a big shift, like probably the biggest life-changing shift I had, was about the choice that I have and how I want to react and respond. And then I think there were sort of two other things. One was I had to stop romanticizing the past. To be very honest, my marriage should have ended probably 8 years before I ended it. But for so many reasons, I held on and I continued to enable him and our relationship and all that it was because I was romanticizing the past. And so part
Mhm.
of my journey there was honoring and recognizing the good times that we had in our marriage and in our family and the things that I loved about what we had. And I had to also acknowledge that they had ended and that was okay and that there will be new opportunities and changes. And so I had to go from looking back to looking forward with intention and purpose instead of just looking in the rearview mirror all the time. I was looking forward, but looking in the rearview mirror, caught in the trap of what was going on in my life and the stories I was telling myself. And then the third thing that was sort of a big aha for me was, again, people pleasing, performance oriented perfectionist. I lived in fear of making mistakes. And so I had to get
I
to a
remember
place,
that.
yeah, where it was okay to make a mistake. And making mistake was not a bad thing. It was actually about learning and growing and changing. And so it wasn't I was wrong. It was just, okay, that's not going to work right now for where I'm at. And so I had to shift the story I told myself about a perceived failure or a mistake that I had made. So those were sort of the three things for me that were at the anchor of my ability to really move forward in my life.
When you talk about mistakes, I think a common occurrence for many of us is when we make a mistake, we identify as the mistake,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so we identify as the mistake
Yeah.
versus I did something that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a big distinction because there's huge burden and shame that comes with I am wrong, I am the
Incredible.
mistake, I am, all the adjectives that we use to describe ourselves when we're in that place of shame
Yeah.
and blame and all these different things. And when we are able to separate ourselves from the mistake and say, I am whole and complete and brilliant and talented, and
Yeah.
the choice I made um, had me in a position to learn so much because it
Yes.
didn't work out.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a huge shift
Yeah.
in thinking. Uh, I want to go and talk a little bit around just this whole concept of responsibility
Mhm.
and and the victim and what it took for you to let that go. And I want to sit here for a moment because I think that we are conditioned by society to give other people and other powers be and institutions responsibility for our life and our well-being.
Yes. Yes.
And I remember telling you, Jules, 100% responsibility is the most powerful place you can sit. And
Yeah.
you looked at me like I had two heads.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was not hearing it.
So what shifted?
Yeah, I actually had to go back and dig deeper, and I was angry at you. I did not like you. I liked you. I didn't like the words you were sharing with me, and we joke about that all the time, but it really, you stirred me up when you started that conversation and you kept coming back to it. And what changed was I had to do some real deep diving and reflecting on what the words meant. And one of the things that's been really powerful for me, oh my gosh, there's been so many things that have been powerful, but one of the other things that has been powerful for me is not just saying words, understanding what the words mean.
Yes.
And
Oh,
so I actually go
preach.
back when we
Yes.
have those conversations and I will look up what the meaning of the word is. And then I will write down also what my interpretation of the meaning. Usually I start with my interpretation of the meaning of the word so that I understand where my head is at. And then I go to the dictionary meaning of what that is. And I just do some digging. Okay, what's the story I'm telling myself about this word and what place it has in my life? And so it wasn't until I was ready to I mean, and again, I was in a place of dissatisfaction, ultimate dissatisfaction. I knew there was more from my life. It was bursting inside, but I had no idea how to get there. And I was just so crumbled after all of this perceived failure and negativity in my life. And so I just knew like I had to dig deeper. And so what does the word victim mean? What does choice mean? And what does it mean for me? And what do I want it to mean for me? And sometimes those things I learned were terrifying and scary. And they were like, okay, nope, nope, that can't continue that way. That needs to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, for many clients that I work with, when they hear 100% responsibility, they actually hear blame.
Yep.
You are to blame.
Yep.
And 100% responsibility is really about trusting and believing in your ability to respond to
Yes.
whatever life
Yeah.
gives you, and knowing that and embracing it.
Yes.
And as I watched you own that and embrace it, it was like a massive 360
Yeah.
and a huge shift in power
Yeah.
in terms of just reclaiming it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I had, and I think you're absolutely right. I think society does create this path for us to, and for myself, I grew up, don't ask questions, don't question your elders, your teachers, your parents, your pastors, all those kinds of things. So I naively spent a lot of my life, okay, whatever you said goes. And, oh, you want me to do that? Okay, it must be the right thing for me. So I'm going to do that. It sounds crazy that we do that, but we do because we have no reason to not trust the people that are in
Yeah.
positions of trust in our life, right? And so, when you started probing me about, being a victim or stepping out of being a victim and having that 100% responsibility, I was like, no way, man. I'm all about the blame. It was everybody else's problem. It's their fault that I'm the way I am. And it just, yeah, it hurt to acknowledge that that was not the case. And that at the end of the day, and it still gets me, but at the end of the day, I chose to allow myself to stay. Now, there were situations and circumstances where I believed, the story I told myself was that if I made a choice contrary to what was happening, I was going to lose something, or it was going to be awful or whatever that
Or
is.
lose someone.
Yes, or lose someone or my entire community. And as a matter of fact, I did get bold enough at one point to make a decision that impacted, everybody in my immediate community that I'd known for so long, to turn their backs and go another way. And it hurt at the time, but I knew that I was making the right decision
Yeah.
for me at that stage. And that was, a bit of the beginning of starting to do those types of things. But the moment we can own our role in our life, I mean, it's our life, it's nobody else's life. It's, you know, when you realize it's not anybody else's life, that is powerful. And so, yeah, owning
Sure,
your
for
decision,
sure.
life changing.
Yeah. And you know, it's so powerful because when I am able to take responsibility, and I want to highlight, even when someone did me wrong,
Hmm.
even when someone is clearly not doing good.
Yeah.
And that's where most people get tripped up because
Yeah.
we have circumstances in our lives where someone's done you wrong,
Yeah.
someone's behavior is not the best. And so, but when we distinguish or pull apart responsibility from blame, it means in the face of what this person is doing and
Mhm.
who they're being, I have the ability to respond and make a choice that is
Yes.
my best interest.
Yeah.
That is power.
Yeah. Significant.
And I know for myself, when I learned that, it was like, who set her free?
Yeah.
Who set her free? I'm sorry for everybody, but I was like, okay, that is so much power. And it's the power that lives within us,
Yeah.
the ability to see it.
Yeah, yeah. It's so true. And, you know, there's sort of three things that three hashtags that I live my life by. Is it sounds weird to say that, but I have them everywhere around my house if you were to come in here. Although, interestingly, I don't have them in my background. I'll have to put them there. But I talk about live life, love like life, and ignite your life. And at the end of the day, you know, I owning 100% responsibility allowed me to start to live my life. I was
Mhm.
living life. I was not enjoying my life. I was certainly not loving my life. I was just existing and it wasn't until I stepped out of victim and I started owning 100% responsibility that I began to truly live the life I desire to live, to become more authentic to who I am. And I'm a country girl, and I was denying that for so long. And once I like owned that's who I am, it was like I just blossomed into, you know, this really amazing woman. And I was always there, but I didn't allow myself to see that for so many other barriers and walls I put up and
Yeah.
fears. But you know, I can honestly say I'm living my life. I'm loving my life. And you know, ignite my life. I'm ignited in my life. And it's not perfect every day. Please don't get me wrong. I still struggle like any one of us do. You know, when we get up some days, it's just one of those days. But I have the choice on how I want to react to what I do with that day. And there are some days where I choose to stay in bed and rest and relax or binge watch TV because that's just what I need at that point. But I know that I'm sacrificing something else to do that. And I've got to own the consequences of what that is.
Mhm.
Or some days I'm like, no, I'm going to get out and I'm going to go do 1 minute, 1 hour, one day at a time, one step at a time. And I own where I'm at with that. And until we own where we're at, we're not going anywhere.
Oh, so well said.
Yeah.
Before we close, I want to highlight something that you did and something that you talked about because I think it's so important. And for everyone listening, it's a gift.
Mm,
And you said that when you first left, you just, I think you said I was just you be, you know,
yes.
you were just
It
being.
just existed. Yeah.
Existing. And I want to talk a bit about that because oftentimes when individuals leave circumstances, relationships, they are on to the next.
Hmm.
And it's almost like there's a fear of being with me.
Hmm.
There's a fear of knowing me. There's a
Yes.
fear of sitting with me.
Hmm.
And I think the thing that was so powerful that you chose to do was you chose to be,
Hmm.
and you chose to reflect,
Yeah.
and you chose to give yourself time to grieve, heal, get to know who you are,
Yeah.
and to evolve.
Yeah.
Talk about the gift of that for the
Mm.
for you as a person,
Mhm.
and for all of us who get to know this brilliant woman.
Yeah, it really was a gift. And I don't ever want to say that ending a marriage is a gift, but it opened the door for me to mm, really come into my own. And, I talked about the fact that my kids and I, we moved into town, and the home we ran, I called it the healing home. And we knew that we weren't going to stay there long term. And so I knew while I was there, it wasn't the place that lit me up. It wasn't the place where exciting things happened. We all just sort of stayed and we rested. But for me, it was important to just allow myself to feel the feels because, in my marriage, my husband was a recovering alcoholic when I married him, and he relapsed. And so that brings its own, forget my own problems and challenges. We had so many other dynamic things that we were dealing with for so long. And I had never had the opportunity. I didn't make the time because I just felt I didn't have it because I was always in react mode in my relationship. And so I felt I owed it to myself to just allow whatever I felt and needed to happen. And so that was about a 2-year journey. And for some people, they're like, oh my God, for 2 years, you did nothing. No, I actually didn't do nothing. I still journaled. I still had hopes and dreams. But I created space to allow them to come out and come to fruition. And if you recall, I asked my husband to leave the first time and he came back, but that first time I'd created a vision board. That vision board never went away after I made it because it was that this is who I want to be and what I want to work towards. And so there were days where I was just occupying space. I might have just been lying on the couch. I might have been hanging out in my office, but I had the vision in front of me and I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be there. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to do it. And so I'm going to do something that's going to take me there. And at that time, I wasn't doing something every day. Honestly, I was on a roller coaster of emotion and healing and all of those kinds of things. But I truly believe that until we can heal, until we acknowledge what has happened in our life, the journeys that we've been on, the cycles and the patterns that we have, we will not be set free to be who we're called to be. And so that was the biggest gift.
Yeah.
Ooh, I almost want to cry right now. That was the biggest gift I could give myself, was to just allow myself to be, to figure out how the authentic me could really come to fruition in that journey.
Julie Caldwell said, feel the feel. I
Feel the
love it.
feels.
Feel
Yeah.
the feel. Give yourself the gift of feeling the feel.
Yeah.
And 2 years, I dated Suzanne for 2 years.
Yeah.
And when people ask me, like, you're not dating? I'm like, yeah, I'm dating Suzanne.
Yep.
2 years.
Yeah.
I needed to get to know her.
Yeah.
And I also needed to feel the feel. So well said. I
Yeah.
mean, hashtag feel the feel.
Feel the feels. There was a time when we were working together where you wanted me to feel the feels, and I don't want to feel the feels. I just want to take action. I'm an action person. But you have to feel the feel, and it wasn't until you let the barriers down, and you started to acknowledge all of the things that were stirring inside. That was for me, just giving myself the gift of, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see what
Yeah.
comes of it.
Oh, thank you so much for everything you shared
Mm,
and your authenticity, your vulnerability, your transparency,
mm,
for sharing your story. If someone wanted to reach out and learn more about how you work with the women you work with, how do
mhm.
they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is really to go to my website, countrywjewel.ca, and that's Jewel, countrywjewel.ca, and you can find out about what I do on there. My email, you can connect with me or reach out to Suzanne. She knows how to get in touch with me as well. I would love to just have a conversation. My mission is really to just help ignite women who are not feeling ignited in their life anymore. And so I really just want to help, figure out plant that little seed inside and help you get to wherever it is you want to go and what you're doing in your life right now.
Awesome. Well, we have been sitting down and being just touched by Julie Caldwell. We call her Jules, and she is the founder and creator of the Ignite Conference. Jules, this is the thought as I was preparing for my interview with you. This is a thought I wanted to leave people with. True transformation begins when you refuse to settle for status quo. Instead, decide to rewrite your story. It is in the discomfort of dissatisfaction where the seed of your greatest breakthroughs are planted.
Yep. Can't summarize that any better. Perfect way. Yeah.
I am Suzan Hart. Until next time, please know you are brilliant. Know you are oh so very special. And we do this work and we're on this journey because the world is waiting. This is the Influencers Journey Show. Thank you, Jules.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Influencer's Journey. Join us every week as we continue to explore the stories behind the leaders who inspire us all. Remember, the first person you lead is yourself, and influence is a byproduct of inspired action. Until next time, know you are brilliant, know you are special, and the world is waiting for your unique gift. This is the Influencer's Journey.